All right, guys. Our next guest is coming off a successful middleweight debut against Hector Lombard back in February. He has now rebuilt himself and will be taking on Tim Boetsch in a very fan-friendly matchup at UFC Fight Night 112 in Oklahoma City. He is the big rig himself, Johny Hendricks. Welcome back to the program. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Doing very well. Happy to be chatting to you. Now, what's interesting about this fight, Johnny, is that your MMA pro debut was actually in Oklahoma City back in 2007, almost 10 years ago. You beat Victor Ratcliffe in the third round by TKO. Did you realize that your 10-year anniversary was coming up? And considering you're undefeated in Oklahoma, where this fight's taking place, are you superstitious at all to be fighting there again?
No. I'm super excited. I've had a lot of success in that building. I won a national title there. I have in Oklahoma done very well. So for me, I'm just sort of excited to get to be able to fight back in Oklahoma.
I mean, that's pretty cool that you're going to be able to do that. Do you remember what went through your mind when you first stepped into that cage that night almost 10 years ago?
Yeah, sort of. First off, can I strike? Am I just going to try to go for takedowns? That was sort of one of my main things. So I told myself I cannot do takedowns. And I was able to win the majority of it. Yeah, I took him down, but at the first round, I would go for the takedown whenever he strike. Excuse me. The second time is second round, I started doing more stand-up. Started staying on my feet a little bit more. Excuse me. And then third round, that was my main focus, is try to win the fight on the feet.
And did you expect back then that you'd be making a 10-year career out of it? Was something you were sort of dabbling in, or did you think this was the big step and the next, almost 10 years of your life are going to be dedicated to this?
Well, you know what? Whenever I started this sport 10 years ago, and that sounds crazy, is that I really wanted to, if I'm going to do it, I wanted to be a UFC champ. That's really my main goal to start. 10 years ago, I still remember people laughing and sort of saying, who is this guy to say that he's going to become a UFC champ? That was sort of my main goal, is if I'm going to do it, I'm going to put everything I have into it and to be the best fighter I can. I've been very lucky to reach majority of my goals, right? And it's sort of the same way now. It's 85, so I'm thinking of it as it's a new beginning. I got to go out there, prove myself every fight, and I want to be a UFC champ again. That's really where my head is. As of right now, that's where my head is at, is how do I become a UFC champ again?
Well, speaking of that, let's go back a couple of months ago to UFC Nova Scotia. Mentally, what did it feel like beating Hector Lombard and getting your first win in almost 2 years? Was it something that you felt you needed to do in order to prove to yourself that you were still capable of sort of fighting and doing it?
You know what? It wasn't even about the win. It was about, am I happy? That was the first time in 2 years, almost 2 years, I've been happy to fight. That I wasn't just hating life. I talked about retirement, and I'd say 98% of it was the fact that, you do a 3-month camp, and 12 or the 3 months you're just focusing on cutting weight, not even really doing much of anything else, but wearing plastics every day, running every day, doing this, doing that. And so now at 85, I don't have to worry about those things. All I get to worry about is training, getting stronger, lifting weights, and having fun again. I have a life again. For example, last year I fought 3 times. So out of 12 months, 9 of them, I was cutting weight. You know what I mean? Like, I was literally trying to do everything I could to hit 170. And now at 85, the last fight, I just had to suffer the week of, and I can't even consider that suffering, because the whole time I was thinking I should be doing more. Like I should be hurting more. I should be running more. I should be doing this more to make weight, right? Because over the last 2 years, it's been that way. Or actually longer. For the last 4 years, it's been, the day of the fight or the day of the weigh-ins, you're busting your butt to get an extra 3 pounds off of you. Where this last fight, I woke up, I was 185 and a half, and I just decided to drink a half a pound. Just so I could weigh in at 86, and then I end up weighing in at 185 and a half anyways. So, it's just one of those things that now I got to switch my mindset to now it's not about how hard you got to cut weight. It's about how much can I improve my skills again.
I think as a fighter, that's the main thing you want to be focusing on. It's amazing that you were so unhappy and suffering for so long. When you were in that fight, was there anything that surprised you about yourself in that fight and the way you were able to perform? Was there anything that you kind of maybe forgot that you were capable of doing and maybe you were sort of reminded in that fight that, wow, this is the Johny Hendricks that I really am and I haven't been able to do this for the last few years?
Yeah, being able to see punches coming, being able to throw out combinations, off the fly. I see something, boom, boom, boom. Okay, it lands. Continue to do that. Because if you watch let's just even take last year. If I did anything, if I had any type of success, I would never go back to it. And the reason why is because it takes energy. And I'm more concerned of can I get through the third round? Right? Where this last fight, whenever I did that, I was able to continue to do it because my energy level was still there. A lot of people don't realize this, but when you're running as much as you have to and cutting weight the way that I had to, it takes a lot out of you. You know what I mean? The week of the fight, I'm wearing plastics from the day I show up until the day I weigh in, right? That's just the way that it's been. And then all of a sudden, with the IVs, with the IV band, you're not able to put all the stuff, the minerals and everything that you pulled out of your body, the irons and stuff like that get your mind ticking. And not only that, but also your muscles firing on all cylinders. You try to you think you can, but you have to, and I've seen a lot of guys move up and have success. So that's whenever I was like, I'm over it. If I go out there and I have fun at 85, win or lose, that's all I can think about is just enjoyment, right? I love fighting. So if that means that I got to be at 85 and take it 1 or 2 fights to get a little bit, get everything firing like I used to, then that's what I plan on doing. And that's really where my head's been since I moved to 85. Hey, yeah, was I stronger than Hector? Yes. This is, I'm fighting Tim. Am I going to be stronger than him? Because, he came down from 205.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of excited about this. I can't wait to see, if I can go out there and he tries to bully me and I show him, hey, don't underestimate me. I'm stronger than I look. And he realizes that, what is that going to send to the rest of the 85 division, right? Because you got to think that everybody he fights, he's able to, he's a strong guy. So that's really where I want to defeat him at, is the strength aspect. You know what I mean? Because I know, and one thing that I have that a lot of people don't, is that at 170, they're very fast punchers, right? They're very fast. Yep. And at middleweight, they're not as fast, it doesn't seem like. I haven't been in there with a lot of them, but, the ones I'm training with, the ones I'm doing this and this with, I feel like the bigger they are, they're a little bit slower. And it's true in any sport. The more weight you put on, the slower they throw. So if I can keep that aspect, the speed aspect on my side, I think that's going to really separate me in the 85 division.
And we're gonna get to Tim in a second. I'm just curious, Johny, because look, I think sort of for the longest amount of time, the theory in MMA has always been lose as much weight as you can, get to the lowest weight class possible, and that's where the best outcome for you is going to be. But now with you moving up to middleweight, we saw Robert Whittaker, for example, someone who was kind of struggling at welterweight, move up to middleweight and really dominate as well. RDA talking about passing out in a bathtub before his fight with Eddie Alvarez, trying to cut weight. I mean, it kind of seems like people are starting to realize that cutting as much weight as possible to get to the lowest weight as possible isn't really the smartest way to go about it all. So do you kind of have a different, I suppose, understanding and appreciation of what sort of needs to be done to be successful in the sport? Because I think when you first came in, for someone to say, oh, hey, I'm going to move up to this weight class, even though I can be in this weight class, people would be flipping out. But now it seems like everybody's kind of realizing it.
Well, and a lot of that plays into the IV rule, which I think is a great thing. I mean, I'm not harping on it at all, right? I think it's a very smart thing to have. It does hide people. It takes away any avenue for somebody to cheat. You know what I'm saying? So no IVs, you can't mask anything. And so I think that's a great thing to have. What that's showing us is that, guess what? People like me that used to be able to cut 50 pounds, they're not fighting the way they should on the next day. So now people are sitting here going, okay, well, hey, I cut 35, 45 pounds. Should I move up? Then they move up. Once they move up, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't feel like I do whenever I used to cut weight. Like for me, making 185, the next day I felt like I didn't cut weight because, I'm cutting from 205, 210 to 185. So, you're cutting what, 25 pounds? And really that's nothing compared to cutting 45. You know what I'm saying? So now you're sitting here going, all right, 40 pounds to cut weight, or you can cut 25, and the next day you'll fight that much better. I think that's where we're saying, hey, without the IVs, putting everything that we're losing in our body the week of the fight, we're able to maintain that, still eat smart, so that we don't have to cut that hard of weight, right? Still eat smart, still be conscious about it, and still train the way it's going to fall off. So whenever we step into the octagon, instead of being, so like my last fight, I think I weighed like 198, 200 whenever I fought. That's usually what I fought at 170. So now instead of trying to gain 30 pounds, my body's gaining 15. And guess what? That 15 pounds isn't weighing on me either. You know what I mean? That extra 15 pounds from 170 to 200, you got to think that now I can train at 200 majority of my camp. I can get used to it. I can do all these things. Where at 70, I tried to be majority of my camp right around 90 to 87. That's where I'd like to be. At least the last 6 weeks of the camp, right around that weight. And then all of a sudden you would eat and drink back up and you're at 200 pounds. Your body's in shock for the extra 10 pounds.
And I mean, out of all the crazy weight cuts that you've had in your career, what do you think is the biggest amount of weight you've ever cut going into a fight?
So the biggest one I've cut was 218 to 170.
Wow.
In 12 weeks.
So what was the time period? How long did you have to do that?
12 weeks.
12 weeks. Okay. Oh, so that wasn't so much a cut. That was more going down from your starting weight. What about the actual weight cut process, the actual water dehydration process? What was your biggest cut there, John?
Let's see here. Usually, whenever I used to do water loading, I would show up at like 95 and hit 170. But I'm drinking like a little over 3 gallons of water a day.
Oh, wow. And you mentioned the retirement earlier on in the interview, and that's kind of been the story of your last couple of fights, where if you didn't win or if you weren't satisfied with your performance, you said that you were going to retire. You've gotten the win at middleweight. You seem fresh, rejuvenated. Are you able to put that behind you now? Can we eliminate the possibility of Johny Hendricks potentially retiring after this Tim Boetsch fight?
Yes, because guess what? The reason why, I mean, everybody sort of wanted me to move up, I think, because, I know the news people did, because I wasn't doing good interviews anymore. I just hated life at 170, and that's really what it boils down to is 170. Life sucked. I'll be the first one to admit that. But Now at 85, like I said, 85, I'm starting to wake up and enjoy. I'm able to have fun. I'm able to do stuff. For example, right before that last fight, I was able to go bow fishing. Prior to that, it's been 3 years before I could do something like that. It just that my whole life revolved around waking up, run, this, work out, eat very, you're eating very clean, you're doing this, and this. And, you want to spend time with your kids, your family. And it's hard to when you're on that kind of a regiment day in and day out. Like I said, in 1 year I had 3 fights, so that's 9 months out of 12. You're trying to do everything you can to get down to 170.
Well, let's talk about your preparation for this Tim Boetsch fight. What's training camp looking like these days leading into the fight? Are you still running it yourself as opposed to sort of joining a big-time gym?
No, I'm still running it myself. That's the beauty of this is that, now at 85, I have more awareness of what's going on, if that makes sense. Like instead of sitting here saying, all right, Johnny, so for example, I'll give you an example for a 70 fight. All right, I wake up, I go run on Mondays, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I wake up and I do my runs, right? And every night I do a little run and a hot tub session almost every night. Okay? And then on Mondays, I would do a striking class. And then at night, I would do a jiu-jitsu or something. But I had to choose which one I did hard, right? Because I couldn't push myself hard for both of them because I was cutting so hard. Where now I'm sitting here going, hey, all right, we're doing jiu-jitsu, we're doing a striking class, and I'm lifting weights all in one day. I have more energy. So now I'm able to add more workouts throughout the week because I know that I'm going to recover in between each one. And if my weight starts getting a little too heavy, I just eat, start intaking some cleaner foods, and then all of a sudden you lose like 6-7 pounds. You just maintain that, right? So within 2 weeks from now, I'll probably be at 200 pounds. And I'm going to try to maintain that for the last 6 weeks, 200 pounds, and where I'm training 2 to 3 times a day. So I'm going to work out 3 days a week. I'm going to do striking 3 days a week. I'm going to do kickboxing twice a week. I'll do jiu-jitsu 2 to 3 days a week. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things I can add into my workouts now because I'm not trying to decide which one do I need to put energy in, which one is more going to be more efficient. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? All these little details that I had to worry about.
And I'm just wondering, Johnny, before we get off the topic of weight cutting, I'm wondering if you've ever I don't know how much you watch fights when you're not in training or doing your own preparation, but I'm wondering if there's ever been a time where you watched another fighter maybe struggle and you think, man, this guy just really needs to do what I've already done, sort of go through the lesson that you've already gone through and move up in weight. And I'm wondering if you have any advice to anyone else out there who's maybe considering whether they should move up or not.
Well, you know what? Like I always say, that's to each their own. I wish I moved up a little earlier. Maybe I don't have those extra 2 losses on my bout. You know what I'm saying? That's sort of where you just got to ask yourself, okay, are you strong enough? Do you have the mental capacity to sit here and say, hey, I'm gaining 15 pounds. Can I compete with these guys on that 15 pounds? And that's where I'm pretty excited about it because I love the challenge of it. And that's really what it is for me. It's the fact that I can sit there and say, people thought I was crazy 4 years ago talking about moving up to 185. 3 years ago, moving up to 185. That's what's driving me right now is the fact that I can look at those people and I can say, no, told you I was an 85-pounder. Now it's time for me to prove it. And that's really what it is for me. It's just, it's a competition, right? Everything in my life is competition. And that's what's making me excited all over again is knowing that competition.
Yeah, and I mean, you're speaking about goals. It's kind of funny. We have to sort of mention it. I mean, everybody's sort of thinking about it. One of your biggest rivals, George St Pierre, is also returning, but he is also returning at 185. I mean, what did you think when you saw that he would be returning and to the weight class that you're now currently in?
Well, I can't wait to retire him again. That's really what I've been thinking. I told him, I don't have no disrespect for the guy. He did amazing things, right? But 3 years out of it, things have changed. And he said that I'm washed out. Well, guess what? It's a new Johnny at 185. And I cannot wait for him to see, I can't wait to see how this happens, because win or lose, I think he should come after me. I think I should get that loss back. Realistically, we still don't. It is what it is, but I would like to do it again. I really do. And this time, he thought I was strong at 70. Wait until he feels me at 85, when I'm not killing myself to make weight, when I'm not killing myself just to focus on my weight cut. What is he going to think after the 185-pound match, whenever I'm totally focused on one thing and one thing only? Doing what I did, but better. That's really where my head's at. It's right there.
You've mentioned how you're looking at going for gold, but what's more important for you in the middleweight division if you had to choose between fighting GSP or getting a title shot? Would that rematch with GSP be more tempting for you than getting that title? What sort of stands out as the more important thing?
No. More important is always the title. Hey, like I said, I wish I could fight him again, but if they said, hey, Johnny, you can either fight George or you can go for the belt, I'm going to pick the belt every day. Because if he doesn't have it, then he's not on my radar. The only reason he's on my radar right now is because guess what? If he does beat Bisping, then I want him. Like I said, my goal is to take that belt away and retire him again. That's all that I can think of. But if he doesn't win, and they say you got to fight Bisping, then I'd choose Bisping over him any day of the week.
It's interesting because he obviously he's a huge name and he's come back, and the UFC have thrown him into this title picture, even though there's a lot of guys that are already waiting for it. I'm wondering if, let's say he does beat Bisping, I'm wondering if you think he can, and if he does, do you think he sort of owes it to the division to stick around, maybe defend the belt at least once or a couple of times?
Oh yeah, he does. I think that's the whole point of being a title, winning the belt is to sit here and say, hey, I made a decision to come out of retirement to go for a belt. After I win it, try to defend it once or twice. Now, if he can't, then he wants to go back to retirement, then do it. But if he does and he continues to defend it, then you can sit there and say, all right, he might be the best fighter ever.
And I mean, just quickly on that matchup, how do you see that going? Do you see him beating Bisping, or do you think the size difference, the time away from the cage, Bisping remains champion?
You know what? That one is tough. Okay, and yes, it is size. Is the size going to affect me? But you know what? I've been fighting guys bigger than me all my life. I really don't care. I don't care about size. Size means nothing. Now, how to use that size? Like, for example, GSP. They said that he could jab me to death. I don't think he hit me that many times with his jab out of 5 rounds. So size is only if you allow it to be there. And can he handle the weight of an 85-pounder for 15 or 25 minutes? That's the question. Like, even me, I'm pretty excited to see what I can do with Tim Boetsch for 15 minutes. Can I handle his size? Can I do this? And that's what I'm saying. I want to beat him at his own game. And that means I want to beat him with the size aspect. I want to show the world that I can compete at 85. I don't care how big or how strong people say they are. They haven't ran into me yet.
Wow.
And that's really, really important to me to prove that. So that way I can move forward at the 185 division, and everybody will start to say, okay, even though he's 5'9.5", he's still beating up guys just like he did in the welterweight division with 74, 76, inch reach. It doesn't matter.
Well, Johny, we're excited for this rebirth, and we're very excited for this very fan-friendly fight against Tim Boetsch. Just as we let you go, do you have a prediction for how you're beating Tim Boetsch on June 25th at UFC Fight Night 112?
Sort of like I've been talking about. My goal is, I want to go out there and show the world that, hey, I can handle big guys. I am a big guy myself, and I plan on, I want to finish. That's really what I've been talking about, boxing coach. I want to get back to being accurate like I used to be. That was one of my greatest attributes, is not being able to hit hard. I know I have that, but being accurate. That's where I want to get back to, because if I can be accurate, I'm hurting people with not being accurate. As soon as I start with the accuracy that I want to have, as soon as I get that back, I'll start finishing people again, and that's really what I want to do.
Guys, make sure to follow Johny on Twitter and Instagram at Johny Hendricks, and see him fight Tim Boetsch, UFC Fight Night 112 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. We can't wait to see the fight. Johny, thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure having you on Submission Radio.
Hey, thank you guys, and y'all have a wonderful day.